Good evening and welcome to the Historic Landmarks Preservation Commission Workshop number 2 to discuss the form-based code. And we are only discussing code tonight. There will be no actions taken. I just want to open the meeting. It's 5:34 p.m. and we will just go around the table and I'll ask the members to introduce themselves. I'll start with you, Kevin.
My name is Kevin McAvoy. I'm a commissioner on this board.
Andrea Putz, architect of the commission.
Robert Tonner, Commissioner.
Nettie Morano, Commissioner.
Thank you. And I'm Sue Cahill, the Planning Director for the City of Kingston. We also have Kyla D-Day, Assistant Planner with us, and Matt Jankowski, the Assistant Corporation Counsel. So again, this is our second workshop to discuss the proposed enactment of form-based code in the City of Kingston. During our first workshop, we focused mainly on the section applicable to the Landmarks Preservation Commission and its procedural elements. We were not able to get to signage or architectural standards. And so those were the two sections we were going to discuss this evening. Also, just from the last session, Kevin had raised the question about whether or not combining the two commissions into one would have any impact on our ability to apply for heritage area grants. And I have reached out to Erin Drost at Parks, and I actually was able only to get to her today. We've been playing phone tag for a month. But in a discussion with her today, she does not really see an issue. However, she is going to check with some others. So she had me prepare a request in writing via email, which I sent to her today. She acknowledged receipt of it and would discuss it. So I explained that the commissions are meeting jointly now. There is quite an extensive amount of overlap already in the reviews and what is being discussed and reviewed. I also indicated that there was an overlap in membership and that by dissolving the HAC and moving a lot of the activity to the HLPC, I don't think would diminish the quality of any of the review process. So I put that into an email and hopefully we will hear back from her. I did note that it is a timely request and, if she could process it, as quickly as possible, I would appreciate it. So that was done. Kyla and I, after our last meeting, also met with Bartek, the housing director, who's really the point person on the form-based code. And we did go through some of the HLP's comments already, so he's aware of the majority of them. And Kevin, I know we had tasked you to craft some language for the other historic districts. So okay, so when you have that, we'll plug that into our recommendation to be added into the code, because I think that's important.
Yeah, I have all the nomination forms. Just have to pull an executive summary type thing out of it.
Okay, great, thank you. So that being said, I did give you handouts tonight of the two additional sections. The third handout that I gave you is just a referral memorandum from Bartek on the DGEIS. That is not for discussion this evening, but I wanted to put that on your radar. The DGIS was accepted in form by the Common Council and it is in circulation now. And as an involved agency, you are getting a copy of it. The pages that I copied with that memo strictly deal with the historical portion of it, but certainly feel free to go online on engagekingston.com and look at the whole document and its appendices. So that being said, we'll move forward. What's your pleasure? Architectural and site design standards maybe first, if we want to look at that section? Is that? Okay, all right. So we don't have the benefit really of a close screen. What is that message on the bottom up there? It's probably saying that it's being live streamed. No, we're not live streaming, though. We're recording. Okay. I just want to make sure that we're, okay. Okay, so section 40514, architecture and site design standards. It's fairly straightforward. I don't know if you want to just go through it real quickly on your own, but it speaks to, building types. It speaks to building elements, which I think is has a lot of diagrams, which I think are extremely useful. Talks about building materials. You need to turn your mic on, I'm sorry.
Does this apply to every structure or just structures in the historic district?
This is citywide.
Okay.
You'll note in here, in some of the sections, for example, in the balcony section on page 4.3, it specifically calls out within historic districts, balconies are only permitted on new construction or to replace previously existing balconies. So there are some, call outs within, that's just one example, but I wanted to point that out to you as well. And also, as you're reviewing this, just keep in mind that when the commission does merge, you'll take on HAC boundaries, which are a little bit beyond your historic boundaries. So you might be looking at architectural features of buildings that aren't exactly within a boundary, okay, or independently listed. Okay? Yes. Yes, that will come. Some of them are going to be administerial. A lot of the activity will move to administerial function only. So, but like if there's new construction, that kind of thing, you'll be looking at that stuff.
Well, that would mean like going down like Wilbur Avenue?
Yes, where the heritage boundary, yes.
Yeah, all of that,
Right,
okay.
right.
And Broadway.
Yes, yep.
I was under the impression those might just go over to planning and it wouldn't stay with the,
Well, I think a lot of them would not be reviewed by a board because it would fall under.
right,
Minors, that minor review,
right.
right.
So a lot of the things like roof replacements, window replacements, that kind of thing, like not come to the board. It would be larger projects.
Right, okay, larger projects that were formerly in the heritage. but-
Right. Our big
landmark.
white elephant that we're dealing with is the the HVAC units.
Oh, yeah.
You know, a lot of those, I think we're going to try and do administerially and not have them come to the commission.
I think the HAC guidelines, I think it was, what, 40531? That was just set it back. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's what it was, yeah. And I think we took the same approach most of the time with solar panels. Just don't make it, you know, yeah, like we come down and we see an Italianate building, and now we just see an array.
Right.
Right. Want to see that Italianate building if we can do it. Okay.
I also just want to point out, you know, in these architectural standards towards the end, there are sections that deal with lighting and landscaping as well. So it's not just, there's site design aspects in this portion of the new code also.
One of the discussions that we had early on the form-based code was this would mostly, as far as we're concerned with historic, apply to infill.
Yes,
We're not trying to apply these to an existing building when
correct,
somebody comes.
yes.
And I think, I guess this must be David Gilmore's document over here. He does make some reference to the secretary's standards. I think it's in,
Secretary of Interior.
I think we were discussing that at the last meeting. I think he does mention that. It's on, I don't know what page this is. Several, page 73 of 160. Down at the bottom, in reference to height and scale.
Okay, yep, I see it.
Almost like he's leading us in a direction to make that comment, I would think.
How so do you think he's leading you to make a comment? I don't read it like that. Yeah,
It's not in the current standards. We have our own standards, and is it 40558?
right. But if someone is going for tax credits, they have to
Yeah.
consult the Secretary of Interior standards. I think he's just leaving the door open that the HLPC can do that. And he's noting that it's appropriate for us to do so if in another instance where it's not required to do that. I don't,
Yeah, well, I think that goes back to last meeting where we were talking about some Secretary of the Interior standard in terms of the model law that they have up in Albany for standards. Might be good to put a comment in that, however he phrased it, which is conditional, I think. It's appropriate for the HLPC to consult the Secretary's standards.
okay, to include that in the zoning
Yeah, it doesn't-
language itself, in the code.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
So that it's not just a secret comment, it's actually in the,
in the code, okay.
well, there's other standards there too, that they carried over from the old zoning, so I don't know if we're throwing those out. I'm not saying that, that's decision everybody would have to make if they're going to make that comment, but at least include this. Implement it so we can use it. And when I first came on the HLPC, I thought it was in there for some reason. And then I realized there wasn't, and yeah, I was spending a lot of time looking at the secretary standards, and it was, one of the other commissioners said, no, you don't have to do that. And let's see what else do we have on here.
You're looking, I'm going to look in the, see where it might fit. So,
On the lighting.
to see where that language that Kevin was talking about might fit into the code. While they're looking at the other pieces, I thought maybe they could find in the HLP section. Okay, I think I found where it would be. I think it's appropriate under that. Yeah, listing it as one of those. Here's the rest of the section on this page. Or review procedure.
Maybe, because this is powers and duties,
Yeah,
maybe review.
yeah. Although it doesn't really fit there if you read that section. Any questions? Comments? Observations? You, turn your mic on, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. It's the whole garden stuff, the, landscaping, and front yard gardens, with fences and stuff like that. That's come up a couple of times, and is that something we want to look at, or is that, I mean, you know, to my, I personally feel it's not a good thing to do. I mean, I've seen a couple houses and all you see is that garden, nice houses, but the garden in the front.
I know, it's come up, and, you know, unfortunately, sometimes that's the only space available on the property for individuals to have an opportunity to garden. Sometimes it's the exposure, you know, that dictates that that's the location that's most appropriate. Um, I know that some gardens can get unwieldy and if they're not tended to, and that I think leads to the unattractiveness. But I do think that gardens, if they're well maintained, aren't so horrible. You know, recognizing that that's, you know, if that's the space that they have, that's what they have.
I'm of course talking about like a vegetable garden that's put in, you know, in your front yard that takes.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not flowers or whatever.
yeah. I mean, there are quite a few around town. A lot of gardens where people are, yeah, I think using the space that they have. Um, you know, just walking around, you see a lot of them. But I think it's really the maintenance of them that is the issue. Yeah.
How do we feel about ceramic mushrooms? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Garden gnomes, yeah.
Front or back, front or back?
They can't be higher than 3 feet. Right, right, exactly. I guess it's, you know, it's like if that's where it is and it's their property, then they do it. There's nothing we should do about it or try to do about it.
Yeah, it's a tough one because I get what you're saying. But again, you know, I understand the property owners need in some cases to locate them. I know when there are issues of like lawns getting, you know, extremely high and they become more nuisance type things, the building safety division has the authority to dictate, you know, like maintenance of that, you know, when yards get, you know, just are not tended to or fences break down. But, or there's nuisance plants, you know, poison ivy, things like that. Noxious plants, they can address issues like that. But I don't know that there's any real regulation against vegetable gardens, unfortunately,
Front.
in the
I
front.
have no problem with them in the back, but
Who would address the issue of a large metal storage container in someone's front yard on the grass? That
You mean like a roll-off kind of, one of the roll-off storage containers or
Who addresses that?
building department? Yep. Yes. Yeah, no, that is the building department. They are regulated and they are required to be located within, you know, setback areas. And I believe they have term limits, like time frames. Yeah, they can't be permanent type storage units because you need extra space and you don't have it in your house. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it's associated with a reconstruction project and you're using it to keep, you know, furniture in while you're redoing the interior of your home, then they allow it for longer periods of time, things like that. Yeah. Yep. Mhm.
otherwise, I mean, I'm not, definitely not the architectural expert here, but I don't see anything unless it's, you know, a case-by-case basis that is screaming out to me on this.
Well, just from a perspective of user-friendly, do you feel that it's understandable as you read through it? Are you able to, you know, relate the document, the verbiage to the images that are presented? I mean,
Yeah, I
things
thought it
like
was-
that
yeah, it was pretty- it was
look good to you? Okay,
Clear to me.
I
okay.
think there's only one sentence for me that I'm not quite certain of, which is in the applicability. It's the very first page.
Which is it?
The very first.
Applicability, okay.
Under applicability, yes. It's the item number 1 says the architectural standards are encouraged but not required for detached house, carriage house, duplex, or cottage court building types. I know it says encouraged but not required, which is great. Because the standards that are sort of formulated here really, obviously for a detached house, don't really apply at all. So I guess that's the chunk I'm a little bit struggling with, is encouraged but not required. So I don't know how you, instead of saying encouraged, maybe it's without getting into, adding in new building types and whatnot. It's just it's a different language when you're talking about a detached house versus what's presented here. So that's my only sort of hang up.
Okay.
How to alleviate that, I couldn't tell you. It could be a thing I'm overthinking it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to reword it or modify, make a recommendation to modify that. I think that if you have detached house or carriage house, if you have a carriage house on a property, if you build a carriage house, I would want it to kind of be compatible with the main structure.
Yeah, no
And
question
in that
there.
case,
Yeah.
I would, yeah, a lot of this is, like, if you look at the elevation drawings, are geared towards more commercial type structures.
Exactly.
And not the residential structure.
Precisely, yeah. So that, I guess that's where I'm saying my hang up is encouraged but not required, as opposed to maybe just, I don't know. I don't know how you, without going down a rabbit hole of saying this is how to not design a residence, because I don't want to get into that either, but just saying, man, I don't know. I'd need a little more time to think about that one.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'll just make a note there. There's another reference to the historic districts under the building details where it talks about doors and windows. Might want to take a look at that one. It's on page 4.28 at the bottom, G. and it's 1B. I'm just seeing in the roof section, there's a area where it says a taller portion of a sculpted parapet may incorporate a signage panel. So that would be something new that we don't currently have. I mean, that,
Ask on that issue, the signage panel is above, on, or below?
the way it's written, where I believe it's talking about a sculpted parapet. So you would have a parapet like you see in the one diagram, and where you kind of see in the center, there's that raised portion. I think it's speaking to that can incorporate a signage panel. But I'm looking now at the signage standards to see if there's a correlation for
Trying to figure out
size.
where that goes from there. Above the roof line or down lower. And maybe it's just the diagram doesn't show size well. A taller portion. Okay, so, yeah, I think that the diagram doesn't reflect the taller portion that's mentioned in G.
No, there's no correlating sign standard for any kind of panel in a parapet. So I don't know size-wise. I mean, there are roof signs and there are wall signs. And I don't know that I would consider it either one of those.
Thinking it's like on Broadway when the historic buildings have the names, it like,
Yeah, but there's nothing, no regulation, I mean, there's no regulation that's,
Something about the size of the,
yes, like size of the letters or square
Or the-
footage or,
right, the
yeah.
Space, yeah,
Yeah.
for it. Just curious.
I'm going to ask, well, I'll ask that question.
is that saying that those columns are too far apart? So they want them to be closer together to be on either side of the door, or?
That's partly my understanding. It is a little bit confusing visually. I think part of what it is too is it almost seems like it's asymmetrical, which, I mean, I've had situations where I've not needed to put, I don't want to put a column in front of a door, obviously, because that's not a very good organization of your structure. But, you know, a wider span, as is shown on that third one, I've certainly had that happen in a number of cases, but with the two preceding it to the left of it, I don't think I would have that sort of a situation occur all on one facade. So I would have maybe that, the third case, and then maybe the case immediately to the left of it, and then again, it would go to the right of it. So it'd be like two, the big one, and then another one maybe occur. I think like what the intent of it is really to get at, let's try and keep things symmetrical and organized and don't put an entry like on a corner or something. That's really more my understanding of it. If I mean, not necessarily. There might be a situation where that would occur. I can't think of any off the top of my head at this point, because a lot of facades tend to wind up being fairly symmetrical, but the I guess it restricts a plan a little bit too from determining where they could enter or exit. Yes, I think that's how I follow it.
I,
One could be a building by itself, the second one.
Or just a series of organization. So if you have a situation where you've got a window between two columns, that's permitted. A situation where you have a pair of columns and then two windows, that's permitted, but you don't want to end up with this like massive span, I guess. I agree, it's. Sure, but I mean, honestly, if you took away that dashed line box and you looked at that straight on, you wouldn't be able to really tell.
No.
I guess I can see that one window is closer to the door than the other window if you really.
At it. Yeah. But I guess, again, I get the sort of intent with it is that keep things organized and not just make things random.
Yeah, but basically keep them symmetrical.
Yeah, but to that point, I've had a number of situations occur on a residential facade, for example, you know, a detached house, where putting the door front and center in the middle of this facade didn't make sense. That happened. You see it all over Kingston too, where
Right.
putting it off center actually looks more attractive than putting it dead in the middle. So just something to be conscious of, I guess.
I don't know off the top of my head if someone were to propose a situation like that, they could probably request a waiver. They would request a waiver. And whether it would fall into minor or major, I don't know off the top of my head. We'd have to look at that.
I could see a more modern expression being taken with a home, maybe, where that sort of situation might apply. Maybe it doesn't require columns at certain intervals. Maybe they've got a gigantic beam, which I've seen also happen before.
Right.
So, and then you have a little bit more liberty as to where your fenestration and thresholds can fall.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my take on it. Could actually have a situation where you might need a faux column, where it says columns should always support a structural spanning element. What if it's a faux column? Then it's not supporting. So you may need it just for visual purposes to create the sense of symmetry.
I see what you're saying.
And I don't 100% agree with point D about columns and the visual that follows with it, alignment of column neck and face of entablature. I'll have a situation maybe where, well, I guess if you kind of use figure D and figure C in tandem, yeah, right, Robert? The overhang on figure C, if you look at it in the elevation, that makes sense. It's protecting the column capital. But if it's freestanding as you see it in D without any protection, then that could potentially lead to ruin or rot. And then the figure where it's crossed out would actually support having less maintenance on that column capital. And again, in this situation, it's a little bit strange because, I mean, it looks like it's just a flat roof canopy and not
I mean, in B.
this figure here.
Oh, down here?
Yeah.
In D. Okay.
I would still probably have a column expressed below that and not show it as it is. Scott Dutton would be very proud of me for saying that. No, just making sure that a column or a beam, excuse me, is expressed properly and not flush framed with the rest of the canopy as it's shown. The way it appears in figure C, the figure right above it, it looks fantastic. The figure on the left side, not the one that's crossed out.
Right, well,
Protect
so what
that.
she's saying here is that that would lead to,
Ice and water falling on that.
right,
Ah,
is the better one.
I think that one, yeah.
So there are situations, and this would go back to Bob Milliken teachings, where you do have the column capital protruding from the beam. But so what would happen, let me sketch it real quick, and then we can see better what this means.
Okay,
Be as it is.
right, okay, I gotcha. Okay, so I'm gonna,
Lined up.
I drew that in on mine. Okay,
So I see, my guess is that's probably what they're trying to, I think it was meant to be a blow-up of this situation here, but without showing the roof.
okay,
But not showing the roof gives rise to more questions.
okay.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Yep, without roof, okay. Okay. So page,
So it should almost say, except in instances where there's a flat roof, maybe, or
Well, and again, the situation where this occurs, if for figure D, with no beam being expressed, that's really I think the bigger issue, if you will. It's not that you can't do it, you certainly, a more modern expression would not have a beam expressed necessarily. A traditional design would have a beam expressed. What you do is you flush frame everything if you didn't want a beam to be seen. But it just wouldn't look like this, that's all. But I feel like then we're getting into too much of the weeds of how to, what's wrong with having a more modern expression, I guess, is the question. Not every column is going to have, a Doric capital. Maybe it's a 4x4 hollow steel section.
right.
Something like that. Maybe on columns for part B, instead of saying shall be spaced at regular intervals, maybe say spaced at regular intervals to the greatest extent possible. So it still allows for some flexibility in the design.
Okay, so B, all columns shall be spaced at regular intervals to the greatest extent possible.
And then if you run into a situation where you can't, there's a funny load, or you get that situation again where your door, you've reworked the plan so many times, you can't see any other way around it, you have to put a doorway here, and that means you're going to have an asymmetrical column,
Right.
So be it.
Okay. Okay. No, no, no. Okay. All right, well, I hope you feel better. If you do have opportunity to look at the sections and want to just email me your thoughts or comments, please feel free to do that, and we'll share them with everybody. Okay. Good night. Okay. Hey, Brian. Anything more in that section? No?
No, not on columns. I do have a question on balconies, though, where it says second-story balcony shall have a depth of and a clear height below.
Which one are you on? I'm sorry.
Balconies.
Balconies, okay.
Yep. Where it mentions earlier in the same section that you should show brackets. Makes sense. I totally get that. But then at what height are we saying, are we including? Is it the balcony itself or the brackets included that needs to be 8 feet below? There are things in the building code that
I think,
require clearance as far as height goes based on a certain projection.
right.
So, I mean, I feel like you're going to wind up having to design to that anyway, so maybe it's just the walkable area of the balcony. Whatever structure is included in that needs to be minimum 8 feet.
Okay, I see
clear
what
to the
you're saying.
sidewalk.
So like if there's a bracket involved, it could extend yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, the main structure of the balcony, I think, is the 8 feet. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
way I would interpret it,
Yeah.
quite honestly.
Yeah, same. Just CYA.
Okay. Do you want me to propose language change to put something in there to that effect, or leave it as is?
Say it's fine probably to leave it
Okay.
as is.
Yeah. Yeah, we could overcomplicate it if we start adding language, I think. Yeah. I'm just looking here, the building height measurement, that is different than how our current code measures building height. If you look at
Just looking at this depth, this clear language.
That does make a pretty big difference.
building height, page 4.31 says the building height shall be measured vertically in stories from the average grade adjacent to the front building facade to the eave of the roof.
Not to the peak or to the
So
ridge.
that's different than our current definition.
I've worked in another municipality that had a similar expression, which really, so if you wind up with a structure that, meets number of stories, your roof could vary pretty drastically on the eave, from the eave and above. So you
Right.
could end up with a 12 on 12 roof pitch, which makes a pretty big visual impact. Which I don't know who would do that, but with a building, maybe that's already 3 stories, but it's possible, I guess. For measuring stories, the first sentence of Part A story is measured from finished floor level to the surface of the floor or roof above. Maybe that should say eave of roof above, if we're going to be consistent with where we're measuring to.
Okay, Eve, all right.
Based on how it's showing in the diagram there. I've been thinking a little bit more about the the applicability section that I was referring to earlier.
Okay.
Thinking that, I mean, the sections that make sense to still be followed are E, building wall materials and masonry detailing, building details in general, and and whatever is remaining in the section, building height, garden walls, et cetera. It's really just the facade composition and how it's sort of written, geared towards specifically commercial, that doesn't really, and shop fronts, obviously, that doesn't really follow. So I'm wondering if it's something like the architectural, or maybe call it out first as detached house, carriage house, duplex, or cottage court building types should be encouraged to follow sections E, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay,
That makes more sense.
okay.
And
So you think E, which is the walls, building wall, masonry detail,
and building details, certainly,
and G.
Yeah,
Not F, obviously.
right? And
G.
G, H, Y. And garden walls, fences, so section I.
I, J, K.
And then maybe you could go just a hair farther and say, instead of, and I'll figure out how to condense this a little bit, but as far as facade composition goes, maybe to design, oh man, again, I don't want to get down a rabbit hole, because I feel like you should still allow some expression with these four building types as far as being a little bit more modern versus traditional. But saying essentially design structures to be compatible with the neighborhoods they're in, if that makes more sense. Other than that, I don't have much else on architecture and site design standards.
Those were good.
I don't know, I could either be a blessing or a curse to the rest of the architects in the city. Oh, God.
We'll put in a little footnote, Andrew.
Oh, geez.
Oh, and they simplified it. So districts, which would be the waterfront, I believe.
Is that, oh, that was on the,
Well, that's where you get into the real technical stuff and
Right.
the bulk regulations, trying to
Right.
figure, yeah, sure.
okay. Are we good with that section then? Okay.
Like, it's comprehensive to someone like me who's not a architect. And I like, yeah, right, right.
Okay, so we will move on to the sign standards. I know Robert had to leave, but I know one of his comments from their last meeting was to incorporate the Pike Plan signage into this section. So that really is my only comment. I know that there's new language in here that we don't have for electronic signs. Um, There are some design guidelines in here. You want to take a minute and look through these? One interesting note, there's no new billboards that will be permitted. I guess.
There's probably like 10 maybe.
Yeah, there's not a, well, I think there's probably more than that, but there's a few of them.
Plenty of billboards there. I mean, it's a commercial block or street or whatever. Yeah.
While the electronics signs are added in, they are prohibited, and LED display signs prohibited in historic districts. I know, I think was that Robert was asking, I think last time about neon. Was he asking about the neon sign, or was that maybe a planning board? That might have been in planning board. So I'm asking about the neon, particularly in historic districts, because we have, as you're all aware, a couple of proposals in front of us, particularly one on Wall that has neon, as one of its main components for the old Wall Street Theater building there. And as you read this language, that would be prohibited.
Currently, it is not prohibited.
It would have to be smaller, right? They're allowed, are you talking about the marquee?
Yeah.
Because it looks like you're allowed, but it would be an 8-foot maximum. I was looking at that, actually, with that.
Yeah.
Under section C, where it goes into the pictures. It talks about the marquee.
Okay.
Because it says you could have one above, you could have the traditional marquee across the front, but you could also have one extending upward with a max height of 8. At least that's the way I read it.
Wow. I mean, if you look at the restrictions, and then you look at the picture, it's deceiving because the picture is greater than 8 feet and I don't think that that's an appropriate illustration if that's what the height limit is going to be. Right. 8 feet is not high.
Right.
If you look at the windows on the facade, you could fairly closely estimate that those might be about 6 feet, 5 to 6 feet in height, roughly. I mean, I haven't been to the Bardavon in a while, so I can't speak to its scale. But it might not be that far off. Maybe it's like 10 feet in height.
Oh, you're measuring from here to here?
Correct. Yeah.
Not all the way up?
No. If you guesstimate, each story is maybe about 10 feet in height.
About 20.
Yeah.
So you're calling in the illustration just the horizontal piece, the marquee. What would you call the perpendicular?
So I guess that's the question is, how do we define that? Because I'm thinking the height of it is from the bottom here, basically.
And you're calling this the marquee, not this
Right. yeah.
component. What would you call that component?
That would be a wall sign, would it not? Or projecting sign?
Even there, that's only 6 feet.
Right.
So I don't know you could call it that either.
For the face of a permanent structure. Yeah, this is a little bit goofy.
But I think, yeah, I mean, if you look at this one, it would be you're right. I mean, if you look at this example, it would be a projecting sign. But it would,
Yeah, see, that's, because I thought that under section C, the double I there, where it says one marquee sign is permitted per building, a projecting marquee sign may be located above or on the same building. I was thinking that that meant you could have the horizontal one, but you could also have the vertical one. But I'm actually
Yeah.
not sure if that's.
You have one of each, just, yeah. Oh, may be permitted to exceed the area. Yeah. There you go. Vertical, okay. C, B7. Yeah, they do say neon lettering.
That's what it looks like. Right.
Need to put this on the microphone.
Right, what's the other stuff? Yeah.
What's the other stuff? What are the side portions as opposed to?
Okay.
Is this just the wrong picture for this topic? Because,
Or,
Well, even in the case of the one that we're contemplating now, it's got two faces. They're angled back, right? Aren't they? Isn't it kind of a V shape back to the building? So there's no real front. There's just in,
are we talking about the one that's before us?
that we're looking at, yeah. So even that has two faces. So do you call that one marquee because it's all part of the same structure? Or do you call each sign?
On how much, where intended language is meant to go. You know, is it, I can't, I don't think I saw that part of the submission from, oh, that's right. Because wasn't it, or what was it, last week, HLPC was, didn't have to
Right.
meet. So I don't think I saw the, I should have though. I should have reviewed it. I feel
Well,
like
it wasn't on the agenda.
it wasn't on the agenda.
It was not,
Oh, okay.
no. It wasn't on the agenda last week.
I don't
We're
really
waiting
know
for,
about this phantom project that I don't know about. If it wasn't on the agenda.
yeah.
I'm not remembering it.
Yeah, Paul was here. He presented.
Okay. I'm gonna look back in my notes now. I can't remember it. Somebody can pinpoint that.
Okay, so 323. Something that is not shown in here, oh, they do have it. I'm sorry, I take that back. I didn't see it. Sidewalk signs. I think sidewalk signs, there also has to be something that they have to be anchored or secured. I've seen too many sidewalk signs flying.
Especially the last couple of weeks, right? They can weight them down.
From section 7 VII into marquee signs.
Are you now?
In the, yeah, letter B and C of page 4.43.
Uh-huh.
Specifically says right up front, a projecting marquee sign.
Right,
Maybe it should be in the mark.
section C for marquee signs, yeah.
Yeah, I put a comment there that paragraph needs to relate to the next one below it. So it's probably, even if it's just by reference, they should be related to each other. They should reference each other.
Yeah,
So
no,
if
I
you're
agree.
reading one section, you go to, you refer to the other. If you're reading the upper one, you refer to the one below.
Right. So forgive me if we answered the question and I'm half out to lunch because my blood sugar is in the toilet right now. Did we determine, if we're talking about section C, marquee signage, and in the photo, I think we kind of agree that the vertical projecting sign
Correct.
needs to be separate, or not separate, but
Yes.
the language is different, but did we determine?
I did make a comment that there should be clarification that they're referencing the horizontal section only in that
Then-
marquee sign section.
Right, and then
Yes.
are we considering the three sides of that as one continuous sign or just the front? Does that make sense?
We did not make any determination here, but I mean, it is it's part of the same marquee.
Yeah, it's all one, whether it's
all-
three
to me,
sides,
it's all
two
one
sides, or
sign,
not,
right.
it's one sign. Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Yeah, but I think if it's part of the same structure, it's part of one marquee. Yeah. Right, if it's rectangular, because it does say in here, 100% of the building entrance plus 5 feet on either side. So it is giving it a side. I mean, I read that 5 feet to be that side piece. That's the way I read it. Right? Are you looking at it that way too? Okay, it says width.
It's not determining depth. Just from, if you're looking at the facade. If you're looking at the facade straight on, it's the width of the entrance plus space to the left of it and space to the right of it, 5 feet.
No, I say, that's,
It's not talking about depth, it's talking about width. So it's giving you additional space to, instead of just being right over top of.
Okay, but it does, okay, I see what you're saying. So the building could go beyond,
The marquee could go beyond the width, well, that'd be weird. I don't know why you'd do that. Well, and then you would get into that issue, but I don't, it wouldn't be allowed at that point entirely. It's saying you can go up to 5 feet in addition,
right,
not that you are required to go 5 feet in addition. Right. It's a series of doors. Yeah, do we have a picture of the front? Yeah. It would be a little bit tinier, unless they propose adding additional doorways. Dress is your bigger issue. It may not be appropriate to have just a single pair of doors 6 feet wide.
Iconic signs, otherwise should be one word. It confused me for a second. Just read that sentence.
otherwise, oh, yeah,
I
okay,
was like, what wise? Oh, otherwise. It
Okay.
changes the meaning. Yeah.
okay. Well, it's interesting that you even bring that up, because when you go back, and this is something I think that it needs to, when you go back to, where did I see that? D, signs with visible moving, flashing, revolving, or rotating parts are prohibited. So, I mean, that your barber shop pole,
Oh,
I mean,
Generally.
it generally turns, right? Rotates.
interesting. Well, but maybe specific to a barber pole under iconic signs, it's okay. I think maybe,
Yeah, I mean,
because there's other rotating signs, but they call out barber poles specifically here that are okay, right?
I think eyeglass, what's an iconic eyeglass sign? A pair of glasses?
Oh, right, so if you could have just a pair of eyeglasses and you would know that that's an eyeglass store. Same with the pole, you know that that's a barber shop. Yeah. I wouldn't put them in the same category, but they did, so that's okay.
Having an anvil and a hammer, go back to blacksmithing, which I'm not opposed to. It's a hobby of mine, actually.
Blacksmithing? Okay.
Architectural at this point.
Fencing? No? Cool. Cool. Yeah, well, in 18 years, you'll get back to it. You're young.
Okay. Okay. And we are done for tonight.
Good with the idea of punting signage as long as it meets zoning to staff level so HLPC doesn't have to review every piece of signage that comes in,
Okay.
unless you see that there's a.
Yeah, like something like the Wall Street
Marquee
sign
signage, right.
that could theoretically meet the code,
Yeah,
I think is something, yeah, that I would definitely want the
But-
commission to look at.
absolutely. The ones I could see being handled at staff level are, replacement signage under the Pike Plan. If they meet the exact same size that it was previously, it's just new messaging, I'm okay with, not having to review that.
I'll miss knowing what's going to open next.
I know.
I'll miss that.
I will too.
Having a heads
Yeah.
up.
Where are you, Kevin? Under freestanding? Right. Mm-hmm.
Because they are prohibiting them. Right. Yeah, I'm not sure why.
Is freestanding the same as the pop-up signs that are on the curb? Are those the same? Yeah. No?
So, like,
Yeah, monument sign, like at
Okay,
right,
Ulster Savings Bank out front.
got it. I see, not on the building, okay.
right. Right.
I'd like to see those weighted, like, you can do that.
No, no, that's a sidewalk sign. Right. Yep. I mean, they have things in here like, which I mean, you don't want to get picky, but the sign advertising the sale, lease, or rental of the premises upon which it is located shall not be more than or exceed 4 square feet if freestanding, not located nearer than 15 feet to a street. When was the last time you saw a for sale sign on a property located 15 foot back off of a street? They're right on the street. I mean,
Right.
I don't know, it says one sign advertising the sale, lease, or rental. I mean, it's specific. It's exempt from the regulations, which I agree with, but I just think that location is not.
It's not possible, I guess, or most cases feasible.
95% of them are not correctly located. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the staff level review. So you're saying if it's like a in-kind type replacement? Okay. Yep. Okay, I would agree with that.
Maybe even signs that are under a certain square footage, put on there. Like, I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
They might not be replacement, but they might be.
Yeah, I mean, if the sign is simple in nature, too. Yeah.
We'll think on that. Maybe we can come up with, I mean, obviously, we're not making any decisions tonight, but let's think about that language and how to allow that, because I agree with Kyla. When someone comes in and they have a very small, like the little rye, you didn't see it, but it came to Heritage. The sign is like,
That's a piece of
11 by 17.
Oh my gosh.
And it's all on Broadway, a new sign. So it had to come to Heritage. It was like,
You're
it was such an
cute.
innocuous sign, and yeah, so, yeah, you'd love to be able to just tell that person, go ahead, put it
Rubber
up.
stamp, you're good.
Give us the insurance and you're good to go. So, yeah. Okay. Okay, so I guess we're gonna have to, we'll probably talk about it at the next, our next, meeting. But, do we want to have another workshop session? I mean, I know this is not the majority of the board, so, we'll have to put something out there to think about whether or not the commission wants to have another workshop session, or, to formulate final comments and then go to a vote at a workshop. We wouldn't call it a workshop if we want to do it that way, so that you're focusing on this topic only rather than at a regular meeting. Or do you want to put this on a regular meeting agenda, and, which I think would become a lengthy meeting? So it's up to you, but
I guess my only question is, how many other items do we have that are left outstanding that we would need to cover? I guess that's, instead of making it a,
there's not really a lot.
right,
No, there's not a lot. I mean, I'll wait till hear back from Aaron. We'll put, what we came up with tonight. I don't know if anybody wants to add any additional comments that are here or are not here. I think we've got it pretty well covered.
I feel like if it's a short list, I'm fine with putting it, hopefully it's not a horrendous meeting, the next one, but, if it's a handful of projects and,
Right.
okay, I could see not making a special meeting out of it, a special workshop, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully people have that first Thursday reserved anyway on their calendar, and we'll
Right.
make it a longer meeting. Get it done.
Okay.
And we've done like meetings before.
I'll bring donuts.
So fun.
Keep everybody engaged. I'll bring donuts and coffee.
Hi.
Yeah.
Happy.
I do that with my students for CAD class. I give them starburst in the middle of class so they can get like a little burst of energy.
Okay.
Would we have a draft, like a draft to look at?
I think, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to just create,
On memory.
yeah,
Oh.
you'd have to have something up front. I mean, I took notes from tonight. We have notes from the last, again, there's my,
Well, then there's a public comment night, which is the 23rd, right? And then we
well, that's separate. That's the,
include this stuff, like,
no, that's the DGIS. That's the environmental stuff altogether. There were some typos. We talked about, last time, we talked about exempting the reviews of in-kind if the colors, I think you mentioned that if the colors are from a historic palette, that was another example, if the signage is conforming to the code. That's what we talked about last time. In the demolition review, we talked about 50 years of age plus. We talked about membership a little bit last time. We never really kind of finalized anything. If it should be 7 members with 2 alternates, that should be added into the code, or do we want to look at changing the membership? Kyla and I had a little discussion about, 5 members might be appropriate with 3 alternates. That's what the planning board has and functions, seems to be functioning well. That
Mark was gung-ho
gives you
for
a
7.
little,
Mark
gives you
said
one
7.
less,
We're just having such a hard time filling the vacancy.
That to, yeah.
right, so
I'm
that's
fine
why
with
we were
5.
just thinking
We've
5
been
and
operating
3.
with 5 this whole time, I think, and then hopefully some of the HAC folks are interested in
Right,
combining with us.
Yeah, that would
That
be,
would be,
well, that could boost us to 7 easy if most of them wanted to come over.
yeah.
Bonnie usually has some pretty great feedback on things.
Well, we have 2 already,
I know.
and Bonnie is
Uh,
interested.
yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah, Mike is not. Mike,
No?
yeah, he would have been good. I mean, I tried to encourage him a long time ago to come over. And we do have another individual who is an architect that we've been talking to and trying to join us, because I know that you have to recuse yourself frequently with Scott's work. So we've thought that having a second architect on the board that had a historic, kind of a feel to him would be good too. So we're, yeah,
Oh, is it Jim? Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to him again, tell him that
I already sung the accolades of joining HLPC, truly. And I said I have a lot of fun doing these, so to definitely encourage him to join, so.
He said he was interested.
he said he's very busy and he hadn't gotten, yeah.
That's no excuse.
It's once a month.
Yeah,
This being the current exception. I see him occasionally for lunch and learns, so, yeah. I haven't been to one in some time, but yes. Yeah.
I was looking at the language of the HLPC and the code. There's 2 sections. One is powers and duties, and I'm going to your statement, Kevin, that you wanted to see that language that's iterated in the DGIS, that it's appropriate for the HLPC to consult to the Secretary of Interior standards. There's a section, powers and duties, where it talks about, it says to apply or impose in accordance with standards set forth in this section herein. I think that there's another section, review, but I think it's really powers and duties, because it says at its discretion with the property owner's consent to cause to be prepared, placed upon one of the, and a landmark, plaques, may make such investigations and studies. I think it might be appropriate in that area. But take a look at it and see if you agree, but I want to include that. I think it's a good suggestion. Okay?
Regarding what Robert was saying about the front yard gardens, that came out of one of the urban ag studies. And there were zoning examples, I think when Jennifer was doing it, Jennifer Schwartzberg, drafted this thing. I think the land trust was involved with it. Yeah, she had a lot of examples. I think Sacramento, California.
Allowing it.
Yeah, I think they were one of them, but there were several.
It's huge in Denver, having a vegetable garden.
Yeah, she had a lot of examples.
Because lots are so small.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to them. I just think, they can get very unruly, and if they're not managed and maintained properly, they can be,
Has the most
uh,
fencing. It's sort of, it takes care of itself if everybody wants to do it. But you don't want to have the sloppiest garden. Right, that's looking for vegetable garden. People walk by and check out their tomatoes. Yeah.
Yeah, people probably
Humiliating.
okay. I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 7:20.